So, hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the current affairs in environment. Okay, this is predominantly for the film in the film's perspective of this year. So we'll be discussing the current affairs. Okay. So first we'll see the major topics which we are going to discuss today. So we'll start off with the topic ozone layer depletion, which is familiar for most of you. Then we'll talk about the global efforts to tackle about ozone depletion. Then the CITES agreement. We'll also see the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act, which has been passed recently. There are like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, protected area networks, which come under Wildlife Protection Amendment Act. So we'll see that. Then after that, we'll see Wildlife Conservation Bond. Then we'll talk about the COP27 of UNFCCC. Then we'll also see the Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund. Then we'll speak about two initiatives, that is Global Offshore Wind Alliance and the IRENA. Then there's also a new initiative, MARS, that is Methane Alert and Response System. Then we'll talk about the contributions of India at COP27 of UNFCCC and also the updated nationally determined contributions. Then we'll see the Panchamrit Promise, and last topic would be lifestyle for environment. Okay, so we'll start off with ozone layer depletion. So what is ozone? All of you would have heard of ozone, right? So where is this ozone layer? So as we move up the Earth's surface, we have so many layers above the Earth's surface. The first layer is called the troposphere. Then above that we have the stratosphere. Then we have the mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. So this ozone layer is a particular layer which lies in the stratosphere and which has a high concentration of ozone, that is O3. Clear? So that is what is called a ozone layer. Okay. So as I've already told, it has high concentration of ozone. So why is it there? Its main purpose is to protect the harmful UV radiation which enters the Earth's surface. So ozone layer, it acts as a shield which blocks the harmful UV radiation from entering the Earth's surface. Okay, and this is actually, I have already told, it's in the stratosphere and it is between 20 to 50 kilometers from the Earth's surface. Okay, so what is happening now? What is the problem? This ozone layer is depleting. So what will happen if this ozone layer is depleted? This harmful UV radiation would reach the surface of the Earth, right? So how is this happening, ozone layer depletion? So when we emit the cloud, so many chemicals such as, there is man-made chemicals such as chlorofluorocarbons, that is the halo compounds, that is chlorine, bromine, and their compounds. When we emit it, that reaches the ozone, that is, it rises up and reaches the stratosphere, and that in turn reacts with the ozone layer and depletes the ozone. So we'll see that in detail. And one particular thing you must know is that this ozone layer depletion, which we commonly call as ozone hole, that is most pronounced where? In the Antarctic, that is polar region. Okay, and it actually becomes like thinner and thinner especially during the winter time. Okay, so this is something you must know. So we'll see how this ozone layer depletion actually happens. Okay, so first there is a CFC molecule. You have heard of CFC, chlorofluorocarbon. This is something which is a man-made compound emitted especially from sources such as refrigerators, air conditioners, etc. Okay, so this particular molecule, it rises up and reaches the stratosphere. So when it reaches the stratosphere, UV radiations comes and hits what? The CFC. So when UV radiation hits the CFC, the chlorine from the CFC gets separated. One chlorine atom gets separated. And this individual chlorine atom goes and again hit the what? Ozone, that is O3, which is present in the ozonosphere or stratosphere. Okay, so what happens when it hits the ozone? This splits the ozone particle into one oxygen atom, one oxygen molecule and one CLO. Okay, so chlorine monoxide and an oxygen molecule is formed. Okay. So then again the ClO goes, and when it travel again there, it finds another single ozone atom. Again it combines together, and the chlorine gets separated from there, and again an O2 molecule is formed, and there is a separate chlorine, which again goes on depleting the rest of the ozone. So there is a CFC particle, it gets separated, Cl comes alone, it meets with the ozone, again it gets separated, then ClO is formed and O2 is formed, again it splits into Cl and O, again when it meets with another single ozone atom, and again Cl becomes free, chlorine becomes free, and then this process keeps on continuing. So when it keeps on continuing, that is how the ozone layer gets depleted. Okay. So by 1980s, we discovered that this ozone layer is actually depleting. So what did we do? So the world came together and told, like, yeah, we have to do something. Otherwise, what will happen? All the harmful UV radiation will come to the earth, right? So what did the world do for that? So first, in 1985, they came up with a Vienna Convention. So all of the countries in the world came together, and they would agree to a Montreal Protocol. And later on, then there is one more amendment to the Montreal Protocol called the Kigali Amendment. So we'll see what these are in detail. Okay. So these were the global efforts taken by the world toward tackle ozone layer depletion. So first, Vienna Convention. So in 1985, as I've told you, that all the countries in the world came together for what? For forming a protocol to curb ozone depleting substance from the surface of the earth. So what did they do? They all agreed upon to this Montreal Protocol in the Vienna Convention. So what is this Montreal Protocol? This was actually adopted in 1987. Okay. The basic aim of this protocol was completely phase out the ozone depleting chemicals. I've told you which is the most popular ozone depleting substance. It's chlorofluorocarbon. So the world came together and told, okay, again, we are not going to produce what? These ozone depleting substances. So since all the countries signed, this was the first international treaty which all the countries agreed to. Okay, usually what happens, there'll be some particular country saying, okay, I won't participate in this agreement. But that did not happen in this protocol. All the countries took part. And that is why this is one of the biggest success in the history of the United Nations. Okay, because by like 2000s, almost 98% production of CFC or ozone depleting substances were reduced. Okay, so this was a huge success. Okay, so according to the latest study by United Nations, it is they could find out that this Antarctic ozone hole is actually closing. Okay, that is the ozone which has already depleted, it is actually coming back, and it will return to its original value by 2060s. This was actually very successful. Okay, so we already found that, yeah, this has become successful. But what did the world do? And there is CFC. The purpose of CFC was to use it for what? Refrigeration and air conditioning. So there should be an alternative. So instead of CFC, they introduced something called HFC, hydrofluorocarbon. Okay. So when they introduced HFC, it was not an ozone depleting substance. But there was one problem. It was it had high global warming potential. Okay. So like, for example, one molecule HFC was 1,000 times stronger than what? Carbon dioxide molecule. Okay. So it has high global warming potential. So we told you that this was very successful agreement. So the world thought that, yeah, if we amend this in order to eliminate HFC, then it might be a success. Okay. So they amended this Montreal Protocol into 2016 which is commonly called the Kigali Amendment, and the countries agreed to it. So what was the basic aim? It was to reduce the manufacture or almost eliminate the hydrofluorocarbons, that is HFCs, which is an alternative of CFC by 2045. Okay, so as I've already told, it is not an ozone depleting substance, but it is a powerful greenhouse gas and it has high global warming potential. So into 2015, we agreed to what Paris Agreement, where at least we must keep the temperature rise below what 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, right, by 2000. So in order to reduce that in order to keep that target of what a Paris Agreement, Kigali Amendment also has a big role to play. Okay. So the problem is that all the countries are not phasing it down together, because in 2019, the developed countries already started phasing it down. But India, being one of the developing economies, and since it needs a space for development, it will only start phasing down by 2028. Okay. And that too 15% of 2024-26 level by the year 2047. Okay. So actually, there are three categories of classification based on the development status, but India is only in the third phase. So they have to just start by 2028, phasing down of HFC. Okay. So that is the Kigali Amendment. So we have the Vienna Convention, then we have the Montreal Protocol, and we have the Kigali Amendment. All these related to what? Ozone depleting substances and the alternative, that is to bring down the HFCs. Clear? Okay. Now we'll see the sites. This is one important topic which often comes to news, and what the UPSC is also favorite about this. It's a favorite topic of UPSC. So sites. What is sites? It is a convention on international trade in endangered species of wild fauna and flora. So it actually what restricts the trade in what endangered plants and animal species. Okay, it actually restricts. It doesn't ban. That is very important. It doesn't ban, but it restricts the trade. Okay. So another name for the CITES agreement is Washington Convention. So UPSC might ask, what is Washington Convention? So you must remember it is CITES. And this was actually what I've already told. It aims to ensure the international trade in specimen of wild species does not threaten its survival. So it is basically for what? In order to restrict the trade. Okay. And it was agreed on during a meeting of IUCN, that is International Union for Conservation of Nature. So whenever we talk about CITES, you must remember the body IUCN. Okay. It is formed under IUCN. Okay. And it was adopted in the year 1973, came to force in 1975. And another important thing is it is legally binding on the state parties. Okay. Whoever signs it, they have to follow it for sure. It is legally binding. Okay. And India is also a signatory to CITES. These are the few points you must remember about CITES. And there is two more things you must remember. So the restrictions, I told you there is no ban, but there are restrictions. So there are, what do they restrict? That is the question. So they restrict the trade in plants and animals and their parts, and also they restrict trade in items made from such plants. So it's not just the plants and animals that they restrict, but also whatever they make, like they are making, if there's leather, if they make leather purse, if crocodile leather is taken, or if leather purse is made, their trade is also banned. Okay. So, yeah, for example, clothing, food, medicines, souvenirs, so whatever is banned, trade is restricted on plants and animals, their corresponding trade in items, whatever is made out of them is also banned. And CITES have appendices. So there are actually three appendices. So the first two is very important. The first appendix is of species threatened with extinction. So you're not supposed to trade these species which is at the verge of extinction, but you can trade it only for those which are not commercial purposes. Okay, that is if you have to do some research or some other, like if there's use for the government purposes. So in that case you can trade, otherwise you cannot trade. Okay, the best example is gorilla and sea turtles. Okay, like for example, cheetah is brought to India now. So that import and export is possible because one, it is not for commercial purposes. Okay, then the second one, which is not actually threatened with extinction, but their trade is strictly regulated. Okay, for example, lion is only an endangered species. Okay, but what happens, its trade is what restricted. You cannot kill a lion or take their fur and things. Okay, so that comes under appendix 2. So there are two appendixes for sites. First one is the species threatened with extinction, their trade is completely banned except for what, government non-commercial purposes. Okay, the second one is, the second appendix is for species not necessarily threatened with extinction, but in which trade must be strictly regulated. Examples are lion, mahogany, etc. Okay, so that is about CITES. Now we have the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act. So why is this important? Wildlife Protection Amendment Act. Okay, earlier there was a Wildlife Protection Amendment Act, Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and recently we amended. Like it was passed very recent. So this is very important topic for prelims. Okay, so before knowing the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act, we must know about what, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Okay, it actually provides, it's a law. It provides a legal framework for what, protection of species of wild animals and plants, the management of their habitats, and also their trade. Okay, so it not just protects what the species of wildlife and plants, but also manages their habitats and regulation, and it also has a control over their trade. Okay, and how do they do it? They have like in this in Wildlife Protection Act 1872, there has been 6 schedules. Okay, like the first 5 schedules was with respect to animals, and the 6th schedule was with respect to plants. And the schedule 1 and 2 was those species which needs high protection. Okay, and schedule 5 is also important because it had what, all the species which were called vermins. That is, if it threatens, if certain species threaten your plantation or your crops, then that could be killed, like rhesus monkey or wild boar. So those are called vermins, and those came under what, Schedule 5 of Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, so that is how they gave protection to animals and species. Okay. Okay, so now we have amended this act, Wildlife Protection Amendment Act, and why did we amend it? Mainly, we had to bring the 1972 Act in lines with what, the provisions of the CITES agreement. So that is why one of the major reasons why we amended the act. Okay, and while amending this act, another thing that you must know is that this has given much more power to who? The central government. Okay, so the central government can now designate a management authority. So what does this management authority do? It gives grants, it permits for the trade of specimens. So if there's a particular specimen or a species, if you have to trade, then there is a management authority designated by the central government. Clear? Then there's the second provision which the central government has high power is with respect to invasive alien species. So what are these invasive alien species? Okay, we know that there are certain kinds of species when it comes it would not be native in that particular place. Like a species, maybe a particular species like sea urchin. It wouldn't be common there in that particular area. It wouldn't be endemic. It will be brought from the outside world, right? So what happens when it comes to there? They actually destroy the native species there, and it grows like anything. So such species which destroy when it comes to a particular place is called invasive alien species, and that their trade is prohibited and regulated by who? The central government. Now they import, their trade, whatever is related to invasive alien species was restricted by the central government. Okay. Another role is it also given power for central government to designate conservation reserve. So we'll see what conservation reserve is later on. But just remember, for conservation reserve also, central government has power now. Okay. Now I spoke about the schedules. I've told that there has been 6 schedules in the earlier act, that is Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. In the Amendment Act, they've reduced the schedule and there are only 4 schedules now. So the first schedule is of those species which need highest level of protection. Okay, so you can never hunt it or do anything with it. That comes under Schedule 1. Okay, the second schedule is those species which has lesser degree of protection. That means it is not as much threatened as Schedule 1 species. Okay, and Schedule 3 is now protected plants. Earlier it was Schedule 6, which is plants. Now Schedule 3 is protected plants. And the fourth schedule, that is Schedule 4, is mainly those specimens which are listed in the sites, appendices under sites. Okay. So these are the 4 schedules. So one thing you must remember is there is no schedule for vermins in what? The amended act, in the new schedules of the amended act. Okay, you should not forget that there's no Schedule 5, which was for vermins in this act. Okay. Okay. So this then there are some more amendments which you must be, modifications the act. So there would be a chief wildlife warden for control of sanctuaries and who is appointed by the state. Then there's also like if you have a live specimen of scheduled animals, like if there is Schedule 1 animal which you have in which you keep it as a pet or something, then you need a registered certificate in order to keep that. Okay. Then if there is any captive animal with you, and you can voluntarily surrender it. Okay, there won't be any fine or anything, you can voluntarily surrender it. Okay. Then one important clause in this act is there is exception for trade in live elephants. Like earlier, in the early act, whatever trade with live elephants was totally banned. Okay. But now in the new act, live elephants, especially like those in the temples and everything, okay, their trade is not banned. It is actually it is an exception. And that is actually also a problem with this act. Okay. So yeah, so that is schedule wildlife, and there is few more things about Wildlife Protection Amendment Act. Okay, with all the schedule areas, that is sanctuaries, wildlife sanctuaries or national parks, whatever comes in the schedule areas, there should be a management plan. Okay, and that has to be brought up with the consultation of the Gram Sabha. Okay, so that is about regions of management plan in schedule areas. Then apart from that, I've already told that conservation reserve is could be now brought about declared by who's the central government, and the state government can also declare that. Then also there is an increase in penalties. Like earlier it was only 2,000 for general violation, now it's around 1 lakh rupees. And for especially protected animals, now it's around 25,000, and there's an increase from 10,000 rupees. Okay, so there has been an increase in violation. Then increase in penalties for general violation and specially protected animals. Conservation reserve, actually there is more power for central government. Then apart from that, central government has power for invasive alien species, power over invasive alien species. Then also there is a management authority. Then there is a schedule area where Gram Sabha has a higher role to play. Okay, with the consultation of Gram Sabha only you can make a management plan. Then the schedule has changed to from 6 schedules to 4 schedules. So these are the points. And you must not forget that trade in live elephants, that is actually permitted now. Don't forget that point. And also you can if you have species which are threatened with you captive, or then you can voluntarily submit it, or you need to have a registration certificate. Okay, so don't forget these points about Wildlife Protection Amendment Act. Clear? Okay, so when we speak about this Wildlife Protection Act, there is something which you should always know. Which are the various bodies and protected areas which come under this act? Okay. So yes, the first one is the National Board for Wildlife. This body is directly constituted under who? The Wildlife Protection Act. Then we have the protected area networks such as wildlife sanctuary, national parks, conservation reserves, and community reserves, and tiger reserves also. All these five comes under what? The Wildlife Protection Act. Then when we talk about tiger reserve, we must also know the body, National Tiger Conservation Authority. This also considered under the Wildlife Protection Act. So all these comes under what? The Wildlife Protection Act. So we'll see each of this in detail. Okay. So we have the National Board for Wildlife. So what is their role? Okay. First and foremost point is, you must remember is it who chairs it? It is the Prime Minister of India. Okay. National Board of Wildlife is chaired by the Prime Minister of India, and its role is what? Actually advise. It actually advises the central government in for what? For policy measures to conserve the wildlife. Okay, how to conserve it or what protection is to be given. All those advisories given by the National Board of Wildlife. Okay, and whenever the government is going to do a project in and around the wildlife sanctuary or the national parks, who gives the approval? It is the National Board for Wildlife. So only if you have an approval from the National Board for Wildlife, you can go ahead with the project. Okay, with any project in the wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. Okay, and when the state has already created a wildlife sanctuary or a national park, the boundaries could be altered with whose approval? Only with the approval of the National Board for Wildlife. Here, so you must remember it is chaired by the Prime Minister, and it gives approval to whatever projects happening in the national park and wildlife sanctuaries. And also you cannot alter the boundaries unless there is an approval from the National Board for Wildlife. Clear? Okay. So next is wildlife sanctuaries. Wildlife sanctuaries are actually what? Notified by the central government or the state government. Okay, in order to protect the wildlife. This is actually species centric. Like if you can protect particular species of wildlife, like bird sanctuaries, etc. Okay, so human activities are actually permitted, but only in a limited way. Okay, very limited human activities are like you cannot go and build a house there, but you can go in there for what? For research purposes. So activities actually permitted, but only in a limited way. Okay, and fixation of like you need not like pass a law in order to fix the boundary. Like if there is a sanctuary, you need not pass a law, but by a resolution you can what? Create a sanctuary and alter the boundary. But the only thing is the National Board for Wildlife has to what? Agree upon to it. Okay, only then can you what? Alter the boundaries of wildlife sanctuaries. Clear? Now we have the national parks. So this also can be what? Declared by a state or central government, but the state government cannot alter the similar to the earlier one only. It cannot alter the boundaries except on what? With the recommendation of the National Board for Wildlife. And there is no grazing zones. That is, you cannot like take your herd and go there and let it for graze. Okay, grazing. So you might find it wildlife sanctuaries and national parks similar, but what is the difference between these two? Okay, national parks has higher level of protection than the wildlife sanctuaries. It has higher no-go zones. You cannot go there. Okay, so it is actually the core zone. That is, if you're talking core buffer, national parks is actually the core where you cannot go at all. But wildlife sanctuaries has a higher level of human activities happening there. Okay, and it is mostly species centric. National parks is not it wouldn't be just for a species, it will be for the whole area, the species or the vegetation for everything. But wildlife sanctuary tries to protect more of the species. So that is the difference between national park and wildlife sanctuaries. Okay. So now we have the conservation reserve. This is actually the government area. Like government owned barren land would be there. No, like whatever land is owned by the government, they can declare it as what? Conservation reserve. Like if there is some land outside your government office where it is which is vacant, so you can government can declare it as conservation reserve and grow trees there. Okay. So earlier it was the state government. With the latest amendment, the central government also can declare what? The conservation reserve. And when you declare the conservation reserve, what you must have the permission of the local communities, especially these are reserves adjacent to what the parks and sanctuaries. Okay, so it is actually the buffer zone, that is outlying zones of the conservation reserve, which is of the government land, which can be declared what conservation reserves. Okay, and as I've already told, as per the new amendment, the central government may also notify what conservation reserves. Clear? There's one more thing. This is community reserves. So what is community reserves? This is not of the government. This is private land. That is, if I am owning a land and I've grown a tree there, like lots of trees, and it looks like a forest, and I can ask the state government to declare that area as what community reserve. Okay, so that is community reserve. So the best example is the sacred groves. It's there in Meghalaya. It's there in states of Kerala. Okay, sacred groves is an example. Also, the Miyakavi forest. Okay, that is also could be declared as what community reserves. Okay, so whenever it declared, the state government has to get what permission from the community or an individual. Okay, so that is community reserve. So we have what national parks, wildlife sanctuary, conservation reserve, and community reserve. Don't get confused between conservation reserve and community reserve. Okay, now we have the tiger reserve. This all of you would have heard. So this is also declared by the state government, but that is on the recommendation of who? The National Tiger Conservation Authority. NTC is actually what recommending to what declare an area as tiger reserve. Okay, as of now, there are 54 total tiger reserves in India. I think the latest one is Ranipur in UP, wherein the tigers from Panna Tiger Reserve is been migrating. Okay, so you must know about the latest one and the important tiger reserves. Okay, UPC's favorite area is that. Okay, then we have the National Tiger Conservation Authority. So I've already told they asked to declare what the tiger reserves in the country, and you must know that this is also a statutory body. Yeah, whatever all these bodies under Wildlife Protection Act are statutory body, and it was first established in 2005 as part of what Project Tiger. Okay, so what do? They, along with the Central CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation and Wildlife Control, Crime Control Bureau, try to reduce the poaching of what tigers, okay, and other species in the national parks, tiger reserves, etc. Okay, so they try to control poaching, illegal activities, or whatever, smuggling, everything. Okay, and one thing you must remember is it is chaired by who? Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. Okay, it is not the Prime Minister; it is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. National Board for Wildlife was chaired by who? It was the Prime Minister, and National Tiger Conservation Authority is chaired by who? Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Clear? Okay. So these were what the protected area network. Okay. So now one important thing you must which was there in use is the Wildlife Conservation Bond. So what is the Wildlife Conservation Bond? What do you think about the name? Okay. So Wildlife Conservation Bond is a particular bond which is issued by the World Bank recently for what? In order to conserve South Africa's black rhino. South Africa's black rhino. In order to conserve it, World Bank came upon with the first wildlife bond. Okay, we know there are so many types of bonds in the stock market, but this is a new bond. Okay, so whatever investment come in, they channel it to where? To conserve the rhino population. Okay, so whatever the funding is there, like the received payments, it will be from where? The Global Environment Facility. So you must study about the Global Environment Facility and remember that Wildlife Conservation Bond, the payments received would be from where? The Global Environment Facility. Okay. So one of the important things is the particularity of this 5-year bond is what? the returns, like how much you're going to profit from the bond, that is determined by the population growth of our animals. Like, for example, if the black rhino, if its population doubles or if it increases in the coming years, that is 5 years, then what will happen? This wildlife conservation bond will have good returns. Okay, so the return or the profit from the bond is determined by the growth of population of that particular species. In this case, it is the black rhinos in South Africa. Okay, and if this is successful, they are also planning to expand it to other species such as black rhinos in Kenya, tigers, lions, orangutans, and gorillas. Okay, other species from Africa also. Okay, so that is about wildlife conservation bond. So you must remember, it is for who? Black rhinos of South Africa. It is by the World Bank. The payment is made from who? The Global Environment Facility. Okay, and if successful, this will be expanded to other species as well. And also, what the returns, the higher returns, whatever returns you're getting, it will be what based on the growth of the species. Clear? So that is what wildlife conservation bond. Next, we'll go to one important topic, that is COP27 of the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. Okay, this is a very important topic and a favorite topic of UPSC. Okay, so when we go to this topic, the first thing you must remember is, or you must know is, what UNFCCC is. What is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change? What is it about? Okay. So, I have told you in the 1980s, so from 1970s, the studies were going on. In 1980s, we realized that there is global warming happening and climate change is also happening. So, there was a summit in Rio called the Rio Earth Summit by the UN. Okay, in that summit, this organization, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, was formed. Okay, and it was proposed, and in 1994 it came into the Rio Earth Summit happened in 92, and this organization came into existence by 1994. Okay, this is actually one of the outcomes of Rio Earth Summit. Okay, and what would be the aim? I told you, they understood that climate change is happening. So what is the reason for climate change? It is the greenhouse gas, or those gases which contribute to the global warming, and that is called the greenhouse gases. So in order to reduce this rising global warming or rising temperature, to curb it, and also to reduce the amount. So what has to be done in order to reduce this global warming? You must reduce the greenhouse gases, right? So in order to stabilize that, what happened? This UNFCCC started working on it. Okay, so since 1995, that is every year they have COP, that is called Conference of Parties. Okay, so in every conference of parties, they assess what is the progress in reducing global warming, what could be done, what are the steps. So there are so many important COPs which has happened in regard to UNFCCC, and the latest one is COP27. Early important one, there was Kyoto Protocol, COP, in which Kyoto Protocol was adopted. Then we have the Paris Climate Deal, and there are so many other COPs which are really important. Okay, and you must remember, this is one of the bodies which was formed as an outcome from the Rio Earth Summit of 92. Okay, which are the other two bodies which were formed? Yes, it was UNCBD, that is Convention for Biodiversity, and UNCCD, that is UN Convention to Combat Desertification. So we have UNFCCC, UNCBD, and UNCCD, Convention to Combat Desertification. These three were formed during the Rio Earth Summit. Okay. Here. So now we'll see about COP27. Where did it happen? It happened in Egypt at a place called Sharm el-Sheikh. Okay. And you must remember, this was the first COP since 2016, which was held in a developing country. Okay, Egypt is a developing country. And this since 2016, this is the first time it happened in a developing country. And as you know, what will be the major objective? reduce emission, like prepare for all the adaptation mechanism and mitigation mechanism. And also one important thing is about the fund. Okay, if you have to tackle climate change, there should be adequate financing, especially for who? The countries who are vulnerable. So we'll see that in detail later. Okay, so first we are going to see what are the major takeaways of COP27. So there is a loss and damage fund. There is AWARE, that is action on water adaptation or resilience. Then there's infrastructure resilience accelerator fund. Global shield plan is there. Then we'll talk about the vulnerability 20 group, V20 group. Then there is technological mechanism. Then there is GOA, there is global offshore wind alliance. So we'll see all this in details. Just remember, these were the major outcomes of what? Of, yes, the latest COP27 of UNFCCC. Okay. So first, we'll talk about the loss and damage fund. So as the name suggests, what would be the loss and damage fund? Okay, we are losing something. So, and something is getting damaged. So we need fund to overcome it. So if you're talking about climate change, who would be the greatest losers? It will be the island nations and the coastal regions, right? So, and who is historically responsible for climate change? It is the developed countries, which was highly industrialized in 1800s, right? They are responsible for what? The climate change and global warming, historically responsible. The European countries and countries such as USA. Okay, so, but who is under the brunt of climate change? Who is facing the worst? It is the developing countries. Okay, so this loss and damage fund is actually what, in order to finance such countries to overcome the disasters they are facing. So there'll be cyclones, there'll be sea surges, there'll be what, sea level rise, there'll be sinking islands, right? Coastal erosion. All these is going to happen through what? Climate change. And also there is high erratic rainfall. So in order to overcome this, there is loss and damage fund. Okay. So this was actually proposed by Alliance of Small Island States. Okay. So since 1990s, when they understood that, yeah, global warming and climate change is the major reason for the destruction of our islands, they came out together to establish the loss and damage fund. Although they started asking from then, it's only recently that it actually came into existence. So in the latest COP, that is COP27, the G77 group, which India is also a part, and China came together for creation of this loss and damage fund. Okay, and this is now created. And I told you who's historically responsible for loss and damage. It would be the developed countries. Like, they are responsible for who? The climate change and global warming. So they are already developed. So they have to fund what? The loss and damage. So major contributions would be from the developed countries and also those private and public sources which contribute to climate change. Okay. And who's eligible for this fund? Who can get this fund? Obviously, it is the most vulnerable countries, especially developing countries who are vulnerable to climate change, and also the middle income countries that are facing extreme climate disasters. Okay. You know, like the frequency of cyclones is increasing in India. So India would be eligible for what? This loss and damage fund. And also there are so many islands like the Indonesia, even the capital of Indonesia is sinking. So all those countries, island countries, will also get proceedings from this fund. Okay, that is the loss and damage fund, and it will fund the most vulnerable countries. Okay, and from who would the money be taken? It is from the developed countries and other private sources. Okay. Okay, so that is loss and damage fund. Now we'll speak about what? AWARE, action on water adaptation or resilience. Okay, so you must remember this acronym AWARE and its expansion. Okay, UPSC, it is a favorite thing of UPSC. They'll ask AWARE and they'll give you 4 options, which is an expansion of this. They'll ask what is it. Okay, so you must remember it is related to water adaptation, resilience. So why is this important? So water is something which is going to be scarce. That is, there'll be no water to drink, or there'll be very limited water to drink if there is global warming and climate change happening like in the coming decades. So there is high problem to get fresh drinking water or fresh water. Okay, it will be fast depleting. So in order to overcome that, this aware was adopted at the latest COP under Egypt's presidency, along with who did the water World Meteorological Organization (WMO). Okay, so WMO and Egypt's COP27 came about with what? The concept of aware, action on water adaptation and resilience. Okay, so their major aim is what? To overcome all the challenges with respect to water. So what would be the challenge? First thing, there'll be droughts. Higher temperature, heat waves, etc. would cause higher droughts. Okay, so if there is droughts, what? Agriculture would be what? There'll be challenge over agriculture. So there should be sustainable use of water for irrigation. So the best example is the drip irrigation. So instead of going for a flood irrigation technique, you can go for what? Drip irrigation. So such things, how to efficiently utilize water and how to overcome this challenge of what? Depletion of water. So that is addressed by what? This aware. Okay. So that is aware. So you must remember aware, it is an outcome of COP27 and also what? It is related to water conservation. Okay. Now there's another funding mechanism called the Global Shield Plan. So as the name suggests, Global Shield, it's a shield. Okay. For what? Overcoming the climate problem. Okay. So this is also a funding mechanism, especially for what? Those countries suffering from climate disasters. So we already spoke of loss and damage fund. This is not an alternative for loss and damage fund. Rather, what is it? It acts as a complement. That is, there will be loss and damage fund, and this shield would act as a shield on that, like extra protection. Okay, that is Global Shield Plan. And who has formed it? It is the G7 along with the V20 group. So we'll talk about the V20 group later in the next slide. But first, just remember, Global Shield Plan is for the coordinators. It is the G7 and the V20 group. Okay, so it strives to what? Not complement but replace. Not replace but complement what? The loss and damage fund. Okay, and you must remember who is the first recipient of Global Shield Plan? It was Pakistan. Due to what? Last year they had floods. Global Shield Plan first is going to give their first aid to Pakistan. Okay, Pakistan was devastated last year due to floods. Okay, so that is Global Shield Plan. Now we'll talk about what the V20 group. Okay, Vulnerable 20. So by hearing the name Vulnerable 20, you might think there's only 20 countries, but that is wrong. Okay, there are around 58 countries. Okay, V20 group has 58 countries, and it was formed by who? The finance ministers of the Climate Vulnerable Forum at a Climate Vulnerable Forum in Lima. Okay, these 58 countries, finance ministers came together to form the V20 group. Okay, and you must also remember India is not a member. Okay, this V20 group is there, but India is not a member. Okay, so you can see the V20 countries. So these are the 58 countries. You can see most of them are either least developed countries or the island nations or developing countries. Okay, who are most vulnerable. So you don't have like big countries such as the European countries or USA. Rather, there are so many countries in the equator, in and around the equator, mainly African countries and also the island countries, which are part of the V20 group. Okay, that is the V20 group. And now we'll talk about the technological mechanisms. Okay, so this is also another thing that came about in the COP of UNFCCC, latest COP. So you must remember, it is the time frame is 2023 to 2027. So by the name, what do you think it will be? Technological mechanisms. Yes, in order to overcome the whatever is impacted during climate change, there'll be like water. I told you there'll be water crisis, energy crisis. There'll be shortage of food. Food insecurity would be the industries which have to overcome the climate problem and others. So whatever on all these fields, they're going to bring in technology with low carbon. Okay, So this technological mechanism would give policy recommendations and analyze the issues to enhance climate technology. So in order to reduce the global warming and climate change, whatever technological adaptation is needed, their policy guidelines, their recommendation would be given by this technological mechanism. Okay, it is during the year 2023 to 2027. Okay, that is technological mechanism. So if developed countries developing some technology, like for example, Israel has drip irrigation. It is famous for drip irrigation, right? So that concept could be shared to the developing countries like India or some countries which are suffering from drought, African countries. So that is basically technological mechanism. Okay. Now we have the infrastructure resilience and accelerator fund. So what is this infrastructure resilience and accelerator fund? Okay. So we have already spoken about what the loss and damage fund, right? So this is also another fund, but for what? To create resilient infrastructure. So what is resilient infrastructure? These are infrastructure, like for example, if there is an earthquake, if the building follows an earthquake code, it becomes resilient. It won't fall. Similarly, if there is flood is or something is going to happen very frequent. There will be high rainfall. There will be high frequent floods. So in order to overcome this flood, especially in what the island nations, this infrastructure resilience accelerator fund would help. Okay, and it was launched by who? The Coalition for Disaster and Resilient Infrastructure, that is CDRI, at the Indian Pavilion. Okay, so when you talk about IRAF, you must also know about who the CDRI. Who is CDRI? Yes, it is a Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and it was launched by India. Its headquarters is in India. So there are two organizations which have headquarters in India. One is International Solar Alliance, and another one is CDRI. Okay, and what they are trying to do is to create what is resilient infrastructure so that this whenever disaster happens, it doesn't impact the infrastructure much. Okay, so that is Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. It was launched in 2019, so you can see the details of it. But just remember, IRIF is what launched by CDRI, but it is also supported by who? The UNDP and the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, and United Nations Development Program. These two also existing what? The IRAF fund. Okay. And it will be managed by United Nations Multi-Partner Trust Fund Office in New York. And also, it will be supported by countries such as India, UK, Australia, and the European Union. So these are the points you must remember. You must not forget it is the CDRI, it's launched it, and the role of UNDP and UNODRR. Okay. Apart from that, you must also remember that what is the major objective? I told you, disaster is going to happen where? In the coastal region and the islands. So this fund's objective is to fund who? To fund infrastructure which are resilient to what climate disasters, especially in developing countries and SIDS, that is small island developing states. Okay, and first they are funded to who? The IRIS group, Infrastructure for Resilient Island States. Okay, first initiative. So what is this IRIS group? This IRIS group also was formed in sidelines of CDRI, under CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So IRIS is basically a group of island states which would face the climate, and India was focusing, was stressing toward to create resilient infrastructure in such states. So for that, this IRIS group was formed, along with under whom the CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Okay, so that is Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund. So I told it is under CDRI, and also it supports what the countries such as developing countries and the SIDS, and also the first funding was for whom? The Infrastructure for Resilient Island States, IRIS. Here, okay. So now we'll move on to GOA, that is Global Offshore Wind Alliance. This is also one of the major things that happened at the recent COP. So it is initiated by who? The IRENA, that is International Renewable Energy Agency, and the Global Wind Council. Okay, so what they are going to do? These organizations came together for what? In order to promote offshore wind. That is, like in order to tackle climate change, we need non-fossil fuel-based energy. That is, we must eliminate the use of all carbon footprint. So they're promoting what? Offshore wind. That is, wind. Wind is a good source of energy, which is an alternative. So in order to increase the global wind, offshore wind, this program has come about. Okay. Now, what is the basic aim? It has to increase the offshore wind capacity. Obviously, it will be that. So Global Offshore Wind Alliance, GOA, GOWA. So that is aiming to what? Increase the wind capacity. So they've kept a target. Okay. Similar to all the other targets, they are intending to create what? 35 gigawatts on an average. Like from now up to 2030, every year, they will create what? 35 gigawatts of offshore wind energy yearly. Okay, at least every year. Okay. And by 2030, they're expecting 380 gigawatts. And from 2030, what they are going to do? Double it. Like they are going to use 70 gigawatts each year. And by 2050, how much is it going to be? It will be 2000 gigawatts. So that is the aim of what? Global Offshore Wind Alliance. Yeah. So by 2030, every year, 35 gigawatts of wind offshore wind would be created, and wind capacity would be increased, and from 2030 at least 70 gigawatt every year. Okay, and by 2050 2000 gigawatts. Yeah. And you must also remember it is initiated by who? IRENA and Global Wind Energy Council. Clear? Okay. Okay. So now one more thing you must remember is, who are the 9 countries which recently joined Global Offshore Wind? So all the countries of IRENA are there. Along with that, there are 9 countries which have joined recently. Who are they? There are 6 European countries. That is Belgium, Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, Norway, and the United Kingdom. Along with 1 Asian country, that is Japan, and 1 South American country, that is Colombia, and the North American country, US. Okay. There are 6 European countries: Belgium, Germany, Ireland, Netherlands, Norway, and the UK. 1 Asian country, Japan. 1 South American country, Colombia, and 1 North American country, United States of America. Clear? So these are the latest joinees. Okay. That it happened in COP27. Clear? That is about Global Offshore Wind Alliance. Now we have what? We spoke about IRENA. What is IRENA? Okay, it is an intergovernmental organization. The thing is, it is exclusively for what? An organization which focuses on renewable energy. Okay, that is one important point. It doesn't have any other purpose. It's only for renewable energy. Okay, and it is the first organization which exclusively focuses on this renewable energy. It promotes what? Adoption and sustainable use of renewable energy, and also it facilitates cooperation between countries. Okay, it was formed in 2009 at Bonn in Germany, and also it has 167 members, and India is also already a founding member. So 77 founding member, and also it's headquartered at Abu Dhabi. So IRENA is headquartered in Abu Dhabi, and India is also a member, and its exclusive focus is what? It exclusively focuses on the renewable energy sector. Okay, so that is IRENA. Okay, so these were the major things which happened in COP. Then also there's methane alert and response system. We'll see that. Before that, we spoke about who? We spoke about IRENA. We spoke about Global GOA, that is Global Offshore Wind Alliance. Then we spoke about who? The B20 group. Okay. Then there is a Global Shield Fund. Okay. Then there is Loss and Damage Fund. Then there is AWARE. So don't forget all these. Okay. AWARE, just remember that the expansion of it is related to water. Okay. So whenever UPSC gives a question related to that, just remember it was an outcome of COP27, and it is related to water. Okay. Okay. So that's it. That were the major outcomes. And there's one more thing which you must remember regarding COP27, that is methane alert and response system. So what is this methane alert and response system? So when you hear the name itself, you'll understand, right? What would be that about? Will be alerting about methane, right? So that is the exact purpose of methane. Okay, it's actually Mars. So it's actually a satellite-based methane alert and response system. Okay, this launched in COP27. What is the basic aim? It helps governments across the world to detect methane, the presence where it is emitted, the presence of methane. Okay, and you must also remember the implementing agency is International Methane Emission Observatory. IMEO is somebody who detects where the presence of methane. Okay, and IMEO is doing this in collaboration with who? Organizations such as International Energy Agency and the UNEP. Okay, you must remember it's not IMEO alone. It is there are other organizations such as IEA, International Energy Agency, and the UNEP. Okay, then you must also remember that why are we looking at this methane? It has high global warming potential. So we'll see about methane later, but just remember, in order to tackle the climate change and keep the temperature within 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, we must look into methane also, methane emissions also. That is why Mars is there. Okay, and remember the expansion of the acronym Mars, methane alert and response system. Okay, and whatever data they're getting of coal waste, livestock and rice, whatever the source from where methane is, that data would be gradually added to Mars, and then they'll also support the global methane pledge. Okay, we'll see what is global methane pledge. Before that, we'll see what is the major components of Mars. So, as the name suggests, it is methane alert and response system. So there are 4 components. Methane is there, alert is there, response is there, system is there. So what is methane? Here, the first component is the Mars try to detect the presence, that is, if there is a methane plume or methane hotspot. Particular area has high amount of methane, it is producing too much methane. So this satellite would detect it. Okay, when they detect it, what happens? Okay, they found it. In particular place there is high methane. So what are they going to do? They are either going to tell the countries or the governments where that is located, or the organizations, like there's a company which is making huge amount of methane and like emitting huge amount of methane. They'll alert them. Okay, they'll tell you must go and look. Here there is so much amount of methane being released, so you must go and look into it. And if the government asks or the company asks the Mars to assist them to reduce this, how to reduce it, then they'll aid them also. They'll give a response. You can do so and so that you can reduce the methane emission. Okay. Then there's one more thing. Okay, you identified the hotspot, you alerted them. You asking them to take response. Like what can do? Then what should they do? They should follow up, right? Like you told them, now you cannot just leave it and go. Instead, you have to keep on tracking it. This would continue. Like if the emission is reducing, but are they taking any steps? So there should be constant review or constant feedback. So that is in the system. That is what is meant in the system. Okay, so the track, learn, and collaborate and improve. Okay, so in 45 to 75 days time, the whatever data that is high methane which they have recorded, okay, that will be reaching the public. Okay, so with that there'll be constant feedback. They can check on like whether they are reducing the methane and the production. Okay, so that is Mars. There is methane detection. That is the a hotspot or methane plume. You can detect it. Then you can alert the country or organization. Then you ask them to respond. Like if they need any help, they can ask the Mars, and then they constantly check on it. Like they'll track and give feedbacks if there is reduction or not. Okay, so that is these are the components of Mars. So don't forget, Mars is related to methane alert response system. Okay. Okay, so there's one more thing we must know about this when we're talking about Mars is global methane pledge. Okay, so we told already the data would be given to global methane pledge so that we can improve the commitment. So what is this global methane pledge. Remember, it does not happen at COP27, which is the latest COP at Egypt, but this happened at COP26 at Glasgow. Okay, so especially the European Union and the US, they came together toward to pledge that we are not going to release any more methane. They are going to reduce the emission of methane. So they pledged it. Okay, so this did not happen in the recent latest COP. It happened in COP26 at Glasgow. And what did happen this year? COP27, the Mars. Mars was adopted in COP27 and the global methane pledge was in COP26 at Glasgow. Okay, so countries such as United States and European Union pledged that they would be responsible. Okay, but they are responsible for 45% of global, not just the European Union and United States. There are other countries also, almost 101 countries. They who are responsible for at least 45% of methane emission. So they agreed that they would cut it down. How much? By at least 30% below 2020 levels by 2030. That is, when you reach it by the year 2030, they have committed to what? Reduce at least 30% of the recorded 2020 level. Okay, so that is the aim. And one more thing you must always remember is India has not committed to this. Okay, India has not signed the global methane pledge. Okay, so it is an initiative of the United States and the European Union, and there are so many other countries also who have joined the global methane pledge. It happened at Glasgow in COP26, and India has not yet signed it. Okay, and the aim is to bring down what? At least 30% below the 2020 level by 2030. So that is the global methane pledge. Okay, so why is everybody so obsessed with this methane? Why? So yeah, we have Mars, we have what? Global methane pledge. So everybody is like, you must cut down methane. Why should we cut it down? Yes, it is a major cause of what? The climate problem. Okay, it has high global warming potential. That is 80 times more than atmospheric carbon dioxide. So if you're releasing one molecule of CO2, okay, and one molecule of methane, this one molecule of methane is 80 times stronger than one molecule of CO2. Okay, although the amount is much less compared to CO2, it has high global warming potential. That is why we are trying to reduce what? The methane. And what are the major sources? From where does this methane come? It doesn't just come up like that, right? So major sources, biological sources. What is biological sources? Yes, the intestinal juices. That is, for example, if cow is chewing, from the mouth, methane is released. Okay, cow dung has methane. So all the biological sources and animals. So if there is a higher number of cattle farms, there will be high emission of what? Methane. Okay, so that is one of the reasons. Another one is the agriculture. Agriculture, especially the paddy. Why paddy? It is flood irrigation that we use for paddy cultivation. So whenever the region is waterlogged, that region will have what? Due to the waterlogging condition, it will have high methane production and methane emission. Okay, so agriculture, especially with flood irrigation and paddy rice cultivation, it emits a huge amount of what? Methane. Yeah, and also apart from these sources, there is also emission from what? Fuels and industries. Okay, so these are the major things you must remember about methane. Okay, it has high global warming potential, that is 80 times more than that of CO2, and it is a big cause of what? Climate change. Okay, and the major sources, like all the biological sources, agriculture and rice paddy fields, and industries. Okay, so when you're talking about methane, you must remember what is methane, about Mars, and also the methane pledge. India has not signed the global methane pledge. Okay, clear? Okay, so these were the major things that happened where at COP27 at Egypt. Okay, so now what will we see? What India did, what we as a country did at COP27. That is what we are going to see next. So yes. Okay, first thing, what we did was what? We committed to long-term emission. development strategy, low emission development strategy. That's LT-LEDs. Okay, we committed to that. We submitted the report and submitted a target. Then we have in a lifetime campaign. Then we also had something called Lead It Summit. So we'll see this in detail. Then there was an MOEFCC, that is Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, and UNDP Compendium. Okay, so these were the 4 things that India did at where COP27 in Egypt. Okay, so what is LT-LEDs? Long-term low emission development strategy. So what is that? Okay, so we have a big roadmap, right? We have to restrict what? The carbon footprint. So India has kept a long-term goal of net zero emissions by 2070. So that roadmap, how are we going to achieve by 2070? That is long-term low emission development strategy, LT-LEDs. Okay, that roadmap is LT-LEDs, and what is there to achieve net zero emission by 2070? Clear? So the problem is what? There are high emission sectors. Okay, so they need a transition in order to adapt to climate. Like, for example, all the factories in US is one of the greatest polluters. So in order to reduce that, okay, this plan, LT-LEDs, has to be submitted. So it's not just India who submitted, there are other countries. So India is the 58th country who submitted this plan of LT-LEDs. What is their long-term strategy to achieve what? To tackle climate change. What are the development strategies? Okay. So India's roadmap is based on what? Their target of net zero by 2070. Yeah, that is LT-LEDs. Okay. In our lifetime campaign, so lifestyle for environment. From last year itself, our Prime Minister has been campaigning for it, right? You would have heard life. So we'll see that later on. But this is in our lifetime campaign. This was something which we proposed where at the later COP. Okay. So what is it about? Yes, in our lifetime, that is, if you are between the age of 18 to 23 years, you must be a message bearer of what? Sustainable lifestyle. That is, India and UNDP together has encouraged youth. So they're asking youth of the age 18 to 23 to what? Change their habits to what? For a sustainable lifestyle, reduce emissions, reduce the use of plastics, all those things. So they're asking the youth to change their behavioral pattern. Okay, and live a sustainable lifestyle. Okay, so you must remember it is for the youth. The In Our Lifetime campaign is for the age group of 18 to 23, and ask them to take what is responsible, like not just the use and throw culture. You buy something, you just throw it out. No, you must shift it. Okay, and influence the lifestyle choices of younger generation. So they are trying to create what? A pro-planet people. Sorry. So by they're trying to, through giving awareness and educating them and bringing a behavioral change in the youth of the country and the world, they're asking what? To reduce the carbon footprint. So why is this important? Okay, so the lifestyle choices, like suppose, okay, I see my parent buying one packet of of food or something. You go to a grocery, buy what? Plastic packet where you fill in all the stuffs and bring it home, right? Instead of that, if you're responsible, what will you do? You will take a cloth bag from home, you'll go there, buy things and come back. Okay, so you're not going to what? Contribute to plastic. Okay, so such change has to be what? Nurtured from the childhood, but now this campaign is focusing on the youth. Okay, and they're also asking them to what? Reduce the consumption, like reduce the materialistic culture where people just keep on buying things, okay, and just don't throw it to the environment. You have to what? Recycle it, reduce the use, reduce, reuse, recycle, these concepts. Okay, especially for the youth. That is In Our Lifetime campaign. So they are aiming to create a pool of pro-planet people. Okay, So you can use these terms while writing your mains or essay. But Lynn's point of view, just remember it is for the youth, and India and UNDP are doing it together. Okay, that is in our lifetime campaign. Okay, now we have the Lead It Summit, Leadership for Industrial Transition. Okay, in this also, it's not just India, it is Sweden and India who has started this. Okay, in 2019 at the UN Climate Action, and it is also supported by the World Economic Forum. Okay, so it's not just Sweden and India, but it is also the World Economic Forum. Okay, and India's student, what happened at COP27? They hosted a summit, India and Sweden together. So what does this name suggest? Leadership for Industry Transition. Lead it. So you're going to transition the industry, right? So there are so many industries with what high carbon emission, right? What happens if there's high carbon emission? You're obviously contributing to climate change. But the problem is these heavy industries, they cannot actually there is no scope for them to reduce, right? They have to find an alternative, right? So that transition from high carbon emission to low carbon, that is facilitated by the Lead It. Okay, so they are going to identify all the industries which are facing the problem that is hard to abate. So that means they cannot, it's hard for them to reduce the emission of carbon. So such industries will need a transformation. That is aided by this Lead It. Okay. So so why is this happening? We know in order to reduce the carbon footprint and reduce global warming, and also by that we would be able to meet the Paris Agreement. Okay, that is 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. Okay, the global warming should be kept below that. Yeah. So that is Lead It. So you must remember it is Sweden and India and supported by the World Economic Forum, and it is aiding heavy industries. That is industries which have high carbon footprint to aid their transition to a low carbon economy. Clear? This is in accordance with the Paris Agreement. Here, only thing is you must remember is this did not form during the COP27. It was formed earlier, but the summit happened on the sidelines of the COP27. Here, so that is Lead It. Now we have the MOEFCC, that is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and the UNDP has come together with a compendium. Okay, so the name of this compendium is Prayas Se Prabhav Tak, from mindless consumption to mindless utilization. So Prayas Se Prabhav Tak. Just remember that Prayas, it is actually in the COP27 they launched it. That is, it is not just India, but it is along with the UNDP. So from India, it is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So these two came together for what? This Prayas Se Prabhav Tak component. Okay. So what is the meaning? From mindless consumption to mindful utilization. So I told you there needs to be a behavioral change, right? So India is known for what? Yeah, we claim that we are known for what? Living in harmony with nature, right? So we have so many traditional best practices which can be adopted by other countries so that they can lead a sustainable lifestyle. Okay, so through that is what the list of tasks are given, and UNFCCC and UNDP is combined together. Okay, so what is it? UNDP, MOEFCC and UNDP compendium. What is it? Okay, the first aim is responsible consumption. So what is responsible consumption? Okay, so I go to office daily. So I would need like 1 shirt a day, right? So 1 week I need 7 shirts, right? Or 7 dresses. So that is my basic requirement. So that is enough. You need not buy 100 shirts or 100 dresses. Okay, so you must be responsible how much things you need. So there is a saying, no? There's everything for a man's need, but not for man's greed. That should be remembered. Okay, so they focus on what? Responsible consumption. Okay, then India also asks for what? Circular economy. What is circular economy? Basically reduce, reuse, recycle. Okay, so they are going to reduce the carbon footprint. If there is plastic or something, they're going to recycle it, they're going to use again. So this process, instead of manufacturing more and more, they're trying to recycle and bring a circular economy. Like they are going to post life also. Like if there is a mobile phone, post life, you can set it if that is dead and you can use it anymore. You can give it back to the electronic store. They are going to recycle it, right? So that is circular economy. Okay. Then next one is living in harmony with nature. Famous India is known for it. Okay, we call it what the Vasudeva Kudumbakam. We live together in this whole world. Okay, it is on the basis of Vasudeva Kudumbakam. Okay, so as India lives in harmony with nature, we are asking other countries also not to just build so many structures like concrete structures and make concrete jungles. Rather, preserve the environment you have and live in harmony with the nature. That was what India is asking. Okay, and yes, sustainable resource management. Like whatever resource you have, food, water, whatever it is, land, you must sustainably use it. Like you must manage it. Okay, instead of just like what keeping the tap open and wasting the water, you have to save water. Okay, so whatever resource you have to sustainably manage it. So that is sustainable resource management. Okay, then apart from that, we are asking all the countries to coexist and for cooperation. Okay, sorry. So this could be achieved by who believe all the countries come together. Okay, sorry. So these are the what major outcomes of what UNDP, MOFCC, Compendium. Okay, so they're asking for what India is asking for: responsible consumption, circular economy, living in harmony with nature, sustainable resource management, and coexistence and cooperation. Yeah. Okay. So now we'll move on to what efforts taken by India. So India is telling like, so we have done all these things. So like we're asking you to do all this. So what has India already do? Okay, in order to tackle climate change. So already have set a long-term target of what reaching net zero by 2070. Okay. Then we have started the National Hydrogen Mission. Make India what a green hydrogen hub. So we know hydrogen is one of the biggest alternative for carbon dioxide, and we can depend on that for what transportation and many other things, right? So they are trying to make India a national hydrogen hub. Okay, and also we are also what transforming to clean energy plants, right? What are the clean energy plants? Like the latest national biofuel policy. It has been updated. Like earlier it was 10% ethanol blending with petrol. Now it is what 20% ethanol blending with petrol by 2025. Okay, so that what is the benefit? You reduce the fossil fuel emission. Okay, so we have updated the national biofuel policy, and now it is 20% ethanol blending by 2025. Okay, then there is also huge focus on electric vehicles. Like in the past 5 years, there has been so many subsidies. There is FAME scheme. So many things are going on, and government is trying to transition to electric vehicles. Okay, so these are the major efforts taken by India. That is, there is net zero emission. There's a long-term target by 2070. Then we have a hydrogen policy. Mission, national hydrogen mission, and making India a hydrogen hub, green hydrogen hub. Then there is ethanol blending scheme, that is in the national biofuel policy, at least 20% ethanol blending. And also there is a huge impetus to electric vehicle project. Okay, they're asking you to use more of electric vehicles. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that is the major things India have been doing. So all this happened at COP27. Okay, so one thing you must remember is the Panchamrit promise. So what is Panchamrit promise? Yes, it happened where the COP26 at Glasgow. Our Prime Minister, Ms. Narendra Modi, went there and asked everybody to keep a promise. That is Panchamrit promise. So what is Panchamrit? It is India's targets, which India intend to do in order to achieve the target of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius to reduce that thing, like the bar. Okay, to reduce the carbon footprint, to reduce the global warming, we have promised what the Panchamrit promised at COP26. Don't forget it. This is not COP27. It has happened last year. COP at COP22. Sorry, 26th. Okay. So what is the basic targets? First one is 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel energy by 2030. So what is non-fossil fuel energy? All those which are not from the fossil fuel. That is, it won't be thermal, right? You can have wind power. You have solar power. You have what? Hydroelectric power. Okay. So this has to be what? All the alternatives to non-fossil fuel energy has to be boosted, and we target the 500 gigawatt by 2030. At least 500 gigawatts. Okay. And we promise what? At least 50% of its requirement. That is, our country's at least 50% requirement would be from renewable sources by 2030. Yeah. So whatever energy we are consuming for maybe electricity or car, whatever it is, by 2030, 50% would be from the renewable energy sources. Yeah. And also, we are targeting carbon emission. That is what? At least 1 billion tons of reduction in carbon emission. That is, we are going to create what? A carbon sink by 2030. Okay. This 1 billion target is from now onwards. That is like from last year onwards. Okay. Then there is also one more thing, that is carbon intensity of economy by 45% by 2030 level. Earlier it was not 45%, it was 35%. Now it's 45% over 2005 levels. Okay. Then there is also the long-term goal of what? Net zero emission by 2070. Just remember the first four. The first for all these four is for what? The target year is 2030 and the last one is 2070. Okay, net zero emission by 2070, 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel energy capacity by 2030, 50% renewable energy by 2030, carbon sink 1 billion by 2030, carbon intensity of the economy by 45% reduction. You have to reduce it. Okay, that's also 2030. Okay, and long-term net zero emission target is by 2070. Clear? So this was the Panchamrit promised by our Prime Minister at Glasgow. Okay. So we already promised, so we have to achieve it, right? So what did we do? We updated our INDC. So what is INDC? This international nationally determined contribution, intended nationally determined contribution. So INDC was submitted on the why did we have INDC? Every country should have INDC for what? To keep within the target of Paris climate deal, that is 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius global warming. So in order to achieve that, every country has to submit what? INDC. Okay, so India had already submitted it earlier, but now in order to what? Synchronize it with our Panchamrit promise, what did we do? We what? Updated our INDC. Okay, so what are the updations which we did? Yes, let's see. Two main things. First, earlier INDC are what? Non-fossil fuel based energy source. That was only 40%, the target. Okay, so we already achieved that 40%. So now we have what? Increased the target to 50%. So we are by 2030, at least 50%, we are going to have cumulative electric power. Okay. So then also the second change, that is updation, is with regard to what? Emission intensity of GDP. Earlier it was 33 to 35%. Now it has what? Increased to 45% by 2030. Okay. Emission intensity of its GDP by 45% of 2030. It is based on the 2005 level. So this is the updation which they did. Then also there is an additional carbon sink of 1 billion tons. That is, already there was a target of 2.53 billion tons. And from now onwards, they, according to Panchamrit promise, we'll be having an extra 1 billion. Okay. So these were the updations which happened to our INDC in accordance with what? The Panchamrit promise. Clear? Okay. So yes, when we speak about INDC, why did we update it? First and foremost, we already achieved the 40% target. So we need a higher target, so 50%. Okay. Then we have already has come up with what national hydrogen mission and green hydrogen policy. Okay. So why did we do it? Make in India what energy independence. So we know one of the biggest problem of India's income and like source of expenditure is what the fossil fuel import. The bill is like that is one of the major problems, right? So in order to reduce that and make India energy independent, so almost most of the energy is from either thermal source or from fossil fuels, right? Petrol, whatever it is. So that is petrol and all is imported. So to make us free from those import bills, okay, we are focusing on missions such as national hydrogen mission and green hydrogen policy. Okay, and also we have a long-term target of net zero by what 2070, and that is submitted by India as long-term low emission development strategy (LTLS). Clear? So that is with regard to what the updated NDC. Okay, so in order to meet the Panchamat promise, we updated the NDC, and most of the targets is by 2030, except for the net zero emission by 27. Clear? Okay. So now, when we speak about all these INDC and this Panchamat promise, etc., there's one thing which our Prime Minister emphasized too much during the last years. Okay, it was lifestyle for environment. That is life. So what is lifestyle for environment? Yes, we are going to what? Live in accordance with the environment. Okay, it was introduced by at Glasgow at COP26, and we are focusing on a mass movement, right? So if we have to reduce the carbon footprint, I alone cannot do. India alone cannot do. So India is asking all the countries to create a Jan Andolan, that is mass movement, to protect and preserve environment so that the carbon footprint is reduced. Okay, so the main focus is to shift behavioral change. That is, there should be a behavioral change. For what? A change from the use and throw culture, use and dispose culture. Okay, you must not just buy things and throw it out. You must use it till the end life. Okay, you must use it to the maximum. Okay, and also buy things only what is necessary. Okay, so this is the basic aim of life, and also it aims to have a circular economy. Okay, it focuses on what? To reduce the use and throw culture and circular economy, wherein there is the concepts such as reduce, reuse, and recycle. Okay, so India is asking all countries to live in harmony with nature and protect the environment. Okay, so they are focusing on a mass movement. So that is lifestyle for environment. Okay, so in accordance, we also launched the Mission Life. What is Mission Life? Okay, it is actually launched by our Prime Minister at Gujarat Statue of Unity, just launched last year, and it has a three-pronged approach. So we told like we have to change our lifestyle, we have to bring a circular economy. So how can this be done? So that is the basic focus of what Mission Life. So it has a 3 steps process, and the 3 steps are: the first one is demand. So what is demand? So we are asking people to change their choices. Like if you are buying at like the earlier example wherein you go outside and buy a plastic bag, instead of that, if you ask for a cloth bag, then the shopkeeper would know that you want cloth bag. So the demand for cloth bag would increase, right? So by increasing the demand of certain project or product, or the focus on environmentally friendly, eco-friendly products, we are asking the people to demand more of it. So what happens if people is demanding more? Obviously, the companies have to supply it. So they change their production pattern. Like instead of focusing on plastic bag, they'll create more paper bags and cloth bags. They'll recycle more plastics when you're demanding it, right? So based on the demand, the company would supply. If there is increased demand of environment-friendly products, then there'll be higher supply. Okay. Then with higher supply, what happens? The government would also change the policy. Okay. Government will ask all the industries to change to eco-friendly products. Yeah. So just like what Make in India or whatever, where government is focusing on more of what products made in India, should also focus on the policies. Okay. So Mission Life is basically for that. So they are trying to increase the demand, whereby by increasing demand, they are what nudging the industries to supply more. And by supplying more, the government is also enabling what policy frameworks to emphasize more on eco-friendly or environmentally friendly good production. Clear? So through policy measures, it means that the government would be giving subsidies, or would be what giving tax exemptions. Those companies which produce what economic friendly, eco-friendly goods. Okay, clear? So that is Mission Life. Okay. So what is the major aim of life? Mission Life? We already spoke about it, right? So there are certain targets. So India asking at least 1 billion Indians and foreigners between the year 2022 and 2027 to what? To change their behavior in accordance with the environment and to preserve the environment. Take every action needed to what? Preserve the environment. So between 2022 and 2027, what are they trying to do? Yes, they are going to mobilize people and preserve the environment. That is the aim of life. Okay. And by 2028, India is targeting at least 80% of village and urban local bodies would be environment friendly. It's very short. It's 2028. They're going to put at least 80%. Okay. Of all villages and urban local bodies would be environmental friendly. Yeah. And based on this aim, what will our country do? Yes, they've grouped it. Like they've recorded all 75 lifestyle practices. Okay, we are going to live in harmony, the lifestyle for environment. So there are 75 practices which can be what? Climate friendly. Clear? So that is what was identified by this life mission, and it was grouped into what? 7 categories. It was grouped under 7 categories. That is lifestyle practice listed under 7 categories. It will be in relation to what? Energy saving, with regard to water saving, with regard to reduced use of single-use plastic, sustainable food systems, water reduction, that is what's the waste reduction, adopting a healthy lifestyle, and e-waste management. Okay, this is the categories which has to be done, which has to be focused in order to achieve what? Our life mission. Okay, so what is energy saving? Yes, energy savings means what? You're going to reduce the consumption of what? Or save what? The excessive fossil fuel energy, or responsibly use energy. We know electricity is produced from where? More than 60% is from thermal energy, right? So we are going to change it to what? We're going to save. We're not going to waste electricity, or we're not going to waste what? Petrol and other fossil fuel. So we're going to save it. So how can we do it? Yes, in a country like India, you can use a public transport. Most of the people have their own private cars. If you're using public transport, what will happen? You're saving energy there. Okay. So such practices has to be done. Now, water saving. Okay. Instead of simply wasting water by taking it from the groundwater, like for example, if you're using flood irrigation, you can still change to what? Other micro irrigation practices such as what? Drip irrigation, right? So you'll save water there. Then you can also use what? The rainwater harvesting techniques. So there also you'll be saving water, right? So all the mechanisms to save water. Yes, there is also reduced use of single-use plastics. So what is single-use plastic? Those which are below 50 microns, or which we buy 50 to 75 microns. Now charges have changed with the new policy, updated policy. India actually banned single-use plastics. Okay, so example is like straw or plastic cover, which we just buy, okay, and throw it away. So instead of that, instead of using the single-use plastic, either you use an alternative cloth bag or something, paper bags or something, whatever, an alternative like paper straws. Now it's very common. right? So reduce the use of single plastic is one thing under lifestyle. So you're changing your behavior accordingly. Okay. Then sustainable food system. What is sustainable food system? Yes, you should buy and eat only what is needed. Okay. You must always remember, when you are not buying, when you're wasting too much food, so much food would also be produced, right? So that is actually wastage. So instead of that, you must practice a sustainable food system, like food habits. Okay. And also, you should not like totally focus on what rice and wheat, because if you demand more rice and wheat, the soil would be stressed and all those things would happen. You must also focus on what other protein rich diet. Okay. So if there is something like that, then you can save the environment. You can another example is you can reduce excessive fishing. Like we know, due to climate change, the fish is migrating to higher latitudes, right? The water is getting more warmer. Fisherman is going to struggle more. So instead of just buying some fish and just throwing it away, and instead of just buy what is required. Okay, so such system is called sustainable food systems. Okay, then waste reduction and Swachhta actions. Okay, we all know that Swachh Bharat mission is one of the most successful missions. Okay, so the Swachh Bharat 2.0 is focusing more on what? Solid waste. Okay, so we are focusing on to reduce the solid waste and also what? Promoting circular economy, processing more solid waste. Okay, so Swachhta action should be taken. Then adopting a healthy lifestyle. Okay, it's not just like what? If you're adopting, suppose you're going from your home to office, you can take a cycle, right? If it is close by, right? So adopting, so it has two benefits. It will save energy. It will also give you a healthy life. So through that practice, what you are going in sync with the environment. Okay. Then also one of the biggest problem is e-waste. Okay, there is so much e-waste produced every year in the country, so many billion tons, right? We don't know how to dispose it. Just buying a mobile phone, there'll be two chargers, there'll be 2 earphones, you're just throwing it away. And it is most of the time just discarded like that, and it reaches like what? So many, like the waste dumps. Like, for example, the recent fire in Cochin, okay, of the waste. So all things, if it was properly handled, that is, if there is proper source segregation of e-waste, and if it is given for recycling, it would cost much less production. And also, we must use every product up to their end life. Yeah. So that is about e-waste handling. There should be proper collection, segregation, and disposal and reuse or recycling, whatever it is. Yeah. So these are the lifestyle practices categories. Yeah. So these are the major topics which we focused on this time. We'll come up with more topics. So I'll give you a 5 minutes revision of all the topics we came up about today. So first, we spoke about ozone layer depletion. What is ozone layer? We spoke about it. Then how the depletion is happening, especially the chlorofluorocarbons. Okay. So we also spoke about the mechanism, how it works, and the global efforts to tackle ozone. Okay. So we have the Vienna Convention and Montreal Protocol, and also the Kigali Amendment. So the first, you must remember all these three. The Montreal Protocol was adopted during when the Vienna Convention in order to eliminate the ozone depleting substance such as chlorofluorocarbon. Okay, and this is one of the most successful initiative. And also there is indication that Antarctic ozone hole is closing down. Okay, then in 2016 we amended the Montreal Protocol. That is what we introduced. There was an alternative to CFC, it's called HFC. Although it is not a although it is not an ozone depleting substance, it has high global warming potential. Okay, so that is, we are trying to eliminate this HFC through Kigali Amendment. Okay, then also we saw the CITES agreement. You must remember it is also called Washington Convention. It is a treaty which restricts the trade in threatened and endangered, critically endangered species. Okay, it is legally binding. And then there is one more thing, that is IUCN is the major organization which is behind CITES, and India is signatory, and it is also legally binding. Okay. Then restrictions. There are 2 appendices also. First one is with those species which are threatened extinction, and next one is which are not necessarily threatened extinction but whose trade is restricted. Yeah. Then we have the Wildlife Protection Amendment Bill, wherein we looked into 1972 Act and also the latest amendments, wherein it was brought about mainly because of in order to implement the provisions of CITES. Then more power was given to central government. There is a management authority. It can regulate or prohibit the invasive alien species, and also they can notify the conservation reserve. Now there are really 4 schedules in the latest amendment. First one is with regard to the animal species, which needs high protection. Second schedule for medium protection, that is medium or low protection species. Third one is specifically for plants, and fourth one is for those in the CITES appendix. Okay, so you must also remember there is no Schedule 5 which is for vermin in the new act. Okay. Then also there is control of sanctuaries by the chief wildlife warden appointed by the state. Then also they are giving a registration certificate. Also there is a scope for voluntary surrender of captive animals. Also there is exception for trade in live elephants. Okay. Apart from that, whenever there is a sanctuary in the schedule areas, if there is some management plan for that thing, there should be participation of Gram Sabha in that region. Okay. Then apart from that, state can also designate conservation reserve, and also penalties for violation of trade on all those things has increased. General violation and species specially protected animals. Okay, we also came about all the protected area networks and various bodies under Wildlife Protection Act. We spoke about National Board for Wildlife. There is wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, conservation reserves, community reserves, tiger reserves, and NTCA. So if you're talking about National Board of Wildlife, you must remember it is chaired by Prime Minister. It gives advices. It has power to review. That is, it gives approval to projects, and also the boundaries of national parks and sanctuaries cannot be altered without the consultation of the National Board for Wildlife. Then we spoke about the wildlife sanctuaries and national parks. The differences, both can be notified by the state government or central government, but national parks has higher restrictions. There is totally no-go zone, whereas wildlife sanctuaries, there is limited activities, and both needs approval from the National Board for Wildlife for change. Okay, wildlife sanctuary is mainly species oriented. National parks is not just species oriented; it is for the whole region. Then we have conservation reserves, which are government areas, which can be transformed to conservation reserve on consultation with the local communities. It's mainly areas around national parks and sanctuaries. And you must also remember the latest one, that is, the latest change is that central government can also notify what conservation reserve is. Okay. Apart from that, there is community reserve, which is for individuals and communities who can declare like sacred groves or some certain areas as community reserve, so that the forest there is protected and the wildlife is conserved. Then there is tiger reserve, where the National Tiger Conservation Authority recommends its state government to declare tiger reserve. Then there are also at now 54 tiger reserve. You must look into the latest one, such as Manipur in UP. And the National Tiger Conservation Authority is also a statutory body under Wildlife Protection Act, and it mainly looks into illegal poaching and trade on all the activities, illegal trade activities happening in the with regard to national parks or tiger reserves. And the most important thing is, you must remember that it is chaired by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Okay. Then we spoke about the Wildlife Conservation Bond by World Bank for South African rhinos. And the payment would be from Global Environment Facility. It is the first of its kind. And the bond, the returns from the bond, it would be from where the population growth, if there is a population growth in the rhino, and it is also intended to be extended. Then we spoke about the UNFCCC and the COPs. It is an outcome of Rio Earth Summit. Then COP27 happened at Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. Okay, and the key takeaways: the Loss and Damage Fund, AWARE, Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund, Global Shield Plan, Vulnerable 20 Group, Technological Mechanism, and Global Offshore Wind Alliance. So you must know. I hope you remember each of these. It is for what funding most impacted from climate disasters, most important countries from climate disasters, especially the developing and middle income countries. Okay, and the funding is by the developed countries. Then we have AWARE, which is related to water adaptation and resilience. WMO has a part in it. It is partnered by WMO. Okay, then go Global Shield Plan. It acts as a shield. Okay, it's a funding mechanism by G70 and V20, and Pakistan is the first recipient. Okay, then we have the V20 group, wherein it is not 20 members, rather it is 58 members. Okay, and India is not a member. Okay, it's mostly of the island nations and those vulnerable to climate change. Then technology mechanism to update the policy framework for enhancing technology during the duration 2023 to 27. Then Infrastructure Resilience Accelerator Fund, which is a part of a CDRI. It's launched by the CDRI with UNDP and UNDRR, Disaster Risk Reduction. Okay. Then the major objective is to create resilient infrastructure, funding the resilient infrastructure in island nations. And the first support was given to IRIS Group. Okay. Then there is Global Offshore Wind Alliance in order to enhance the offshore wind capacity, and it was launched by who? IRENA and Global Wind Council. Okay. Then IRENA, it is an exclusive agency organization for renewable energy, and there are 167 members, and India is also a founding member of IRENA. Then there is MARS, that is Methane Alert Response System. Okay, it was launched in the latest COP, and you must remember International Methane Emission Observatory. That is the organization which actually looks into the data from Mars, and it is in collaboration with International Energy Agency and the UNEP. Okay, and apart from that, it detects the methane hotspots and methane plumes and alert the corresponding country and company or organization, and ask them to respond, or they can also ask Mars for the assistance to reduce, and they keep on checking on it whether they have decreased it or not. They track the progress. Okay, then there is also the Global Methane Pledge, which was actually launched in the previous COP, that is at Glasgow. Okay, the target is to reduce by at least 30% methane 2020 level, and by 2030. Okay, and it is led by United States and European Union, but India has not signed the pledge. Okay, and we spoke about the importance of methane. That is, it has high global warming potential. In India's contribution at COP27, mainly it is LT-LEDs, in our lifetime campaign. Then we have LEAD IT and MOEFCC UNDP Compendium. Okay. Then LT-LEDs is basically a long-term strategy for net zero emission by 2070, and whatever high emission transition we have to do for that. Okay, then there is an inner lifetime campaign. This lifetime campaign is mainly for youth of 18 to 23 years, and it is an initiative by India and the UNDP. Okay, and to create a pool of pro-planet people. Yeah. Then we have the LEAD IT Summit. Both Sweden and India is a part of the LEAD IT Summit, and it is supported. They launched the LEAD IT Summit, and it is supported by the World Economic Forum. And the main aim is to transition those industries which have high carbon footprint, and it's hard for them to reduce it. So they are helping their transition. Okay. And there is UNFCCC UNDP Compendium, which is called the Prayasya Bhartat. Remember these names, especially for films, because UPC love these terms. Like if there is something like that, they have love to ask such questions. Okay, so they are trying to create. So it's actually Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change along with UNDP, which has launched this. Okay, so basically they are trying to educate the world of India's traditional practices, which is in sync with the nature. So they are focusing on responsible consumption, circular economy, living in harmony with nature, sustainable resource management, coexistence, and cooperation. You must know the concept of circular economy because you basically can also ask what is the meaning of that. Okay. Then India has already taken net zero emission target. We have a national hydrogen mission. We have ethanol blending policy within the biofuel policy, which is renewed to 20% ethanol blending by 2025. Then more focus is given where in electric vehicle projects. Okay, Panchamat promise is very important. It was by our Prime Minister at the Glasgow Summit and COP20. That is at COP26. So the 5 targets. The first the target year is 2030. That is 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel energy, 50% renewable energy, 1 billion tons of carbon sink, carbon intensity of the economy by 45%, to reduce it by 45%. And 2070 target is net zero emission. So accordingly, we updated our INDC with 50% cumulative energy from non-fossil fuel base and emission intensity as per GDP to be reduced by 45% by 2030 from 2005 level. Okay. Then we also have achieved 40% target. So that is why we have increased the non-fossil fuel target to 50%. Then we also have the National Hydrogen Mission and Green Hydrogen Policy to make us independent, energy independent. Then we have LT-led also. Then the lifestyle campaign, Lifestyle for Environment campaign of our Prime Minister at Glasgow COP26 in the year 2020. So they are calling for a Jan Andolan or mass movement and looking for a behavioral change, promote circular economy and reduce the use and throw culture. Okay, three things that they are trying to do. Three-pronged strategy, that is demand supply policy. They are trying to increase the demand of people for eco-friendly goods so that the industry can supply more such goods. Industry can transition to based on the demand, and government will also create a favorable policy for it. Then we also spoke the major aims of LIFE mission, that is 1 billion Indian and foreigners who would take action to preserve during the time span of 2022 to 2027. And India says to the world that we will make at least 80% of our villages and urban local bodies environment friendly by 2028. And there is 75 lifestyle practices which LIFE have listed out, and it is categorized into 7 categories based on energy saving, water saving, reduction of single-use plastic, sustainable food system, waste reduction, adoption of a healthy lifestyle, and e-waste handling. Clear? So these are some of the important topics related to environment for prelims. Okay. So thank you.